G'day team, my name's Julian O'Shea, and today I'm going to be doing the webinar version of the video storytelling for better, safer streets workshop. Now, this is one that we've done and will continue to do in person, but this is the webinar version, so you can kind of watch it in your own time. You can either use a catch up if you've been to one of our workshops, and it's just openly and freely available, exploring this idea of how do we design and create better and safer streets, and that includes a range of things which I'll dive into from a kind of personal perspective, but use video storytelling as a way to get there. Now, the plan of attack for this webinar is I'll do a bit of introduction about who I am, the team involved in this project, and what the project is, and then run through some of my experience having done this type of work and a lot of research around video storytelling as a way to create change and positive impact when it comes to cities. So I'll start by introducing myself. My name's Julian O'Shea. My PhD was in the area of urban design meets outreach and education. So what I'm doing right now is very much my wheelhouse. And a bit about me, I do video storytelling. I am a YouTuber. I'm a TikToker. I make videos for the internet. And a lot of them are around design, around urbanism, and around a lot of kind of educational and engagement topics. And I'll give you a bit more information about that as I dive through. One of the series I'm kind of most known for is the Unknown Melbourne series. And in that, I'll go and explore different places around one of the greatest cities in the world. It's certainly been named one of the most livable, and that is Melbourne, Australia. Other things I've done, I've got a bit of a hobby of being interested in transport and trying to set world records around the world. I've done some interesting projects that I'll again share one or two. And recently, I did my first ever Melbourne International Comedy Fest show. And that actually had a lot about city design, in particular Melbourne. It was called Emmys for Melbourne, and is a bit of an exploration of how education meets comedy, but also tries to have a bit of a message. So they're all kind of the ingredients that goes into my storytelling approach, and kind of informs a lot of the work that I've done. So part of the reason why I think that's quite a useful background is I do come from a background of expertise in this space, but my approach in doing it has been quite varied, from a comedy fest show to short form video. Now, she's not joining today, but the other member of the team, of the 100 to 0 project team, is Lucinda Hartley, who herself is a pretty incredible urbanist based here in Melbourne, Australia. And she's got a strong background in architecture and urban design. She's done a lot of social impact work as well as entrepreneurial projects, and has been a brilliant collaborator for this project. So, what is this wider program that we're doing? Well, I'm going to get into that. But first, I want to kind of let you reflect on yourself. So, as you dive into this workshop, there's a few things I want in the top of your brain as I kind of introduce what it's all about. And that is, right now, you're watching me deliver a workshop around video storytelling for impact. But I'd love for you to kind of reflect on a few different things. One, what do you watch online? When you open up your phone, what is the app that you pull up? Is it YouTube, Instagram? Is it within Instagram? Is it Reels? Is it Shorts? Is it Stories? That's part one. So what do you watch? Number two, what is your favorite city? And a reflection of what have you made as far as videos before? Are you coming into this workshop as someone with a bit of experience, or are you newer to the whole thing? Now, I thought I should answer these questions first. So when it comes to me, I do watch a lot of YouTube. It's probably my favorite viewing platform, but I also regularly use the Instagram shorter videos known as Instagram Reels. For me, my favorite city to live in is Melbourne, Australia. I would get kicked out if I didn't say that. But other cities that I've really loved include New York City. I think that's probably my favorite city in North America. But there's a lot of Asian cities that I really enjoy. I love going back to Hanoi, which is a thriving Vietnamese city. It's got a lot of historical buildings, and I like the hustle. I like the bustle. I like the history and how kind of dense it is. You could walk along 100 meters of streets and go past dozens of shops and amazing restaurants and markets. I really love it. And my video experience, I'll share a bit more about, but I'm relatively new to it. I only started in 2020. And the reason for that is I was locked down. I couldn't do my normal education projects I wanted to do. And I said, finally, time to learn video editing. And that's where I began. So this project that this workshop is part of is called the 100 to 0 project. And the reason why is that, unfortunately, the roads in Australia are far too dangerous. Around 1,200 people are killed each year and 40,000 seriously injured, which is a pretty incredible number to happen in the current day. Noting that even one death, I think, is too many. So, look, it's the Australian strategy and the strategy of many cities and countries around the world to achieve what's called Vision Zero, and that is zero deaths and serious injuries on the road. In Australia, as part of the National Road Safety Strategy, the target for that is 2050. But within the strategy, it's a great document, actually, well worth a look. It's got a look at a series of intermediate goals, basically improving things around schools, improving things in urban centres. But that is our overall goal. So, what is the 100 to Zero project in particular? Well, the idea is, can we help achieve Vision Zero in 100 seconds or less? What does that mean? It means that over the course of this project, we're empowering people through workshops like this to make short form videos that improve their local streets or the wider strategy, as well as individuals. So, how can we change their behavior? Encouraging things like better driver behavior, encouraging better urban design, so people could advocate for that in their local neighborhoods, and achieving better streets. So, with our background, we're certainly interested in doing this in a few different approaches. We're making videos, and they're available. I'll share some links at the end. You can go watch some of these videos that we've made, and more are going to be rolling out over the life of the project. We're doing these training workshops, this one online as well as in person, and we're also going to start to share best practice. What does that mean? It means when we make good insights, like the importance of different platforms, building towards an algorithm, the importance of the hook in the first few seconds, we're going to share that with the whole industry. So it means the whole sector can start to make better videos and can reach much bigger audiences. Part of the rationale for this is that in Australia, the media ecosystem is certainly changing. When I was a kid, watching TV was a thing you would do. After school, you might go and turn on the telly. That basically doesn't happen anymore, or at least it doesn't happen in the sense of watching broadcast free-to-air television. That's basically trending down amongst young people. Some most recent statistics I saw said that the average young person, that means people, basically from 15 and under, are watching less than 20 minutes of broadcast free-to-air TV a day. Now, does that mean they're watching less screens? Absolutely not. They are engaging more and more with platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube. So part of this project was kind of recognize this changing media ecosystem with the challenges that we have on our roads and bringing that together to say, how can we use these tools of what's called the creator economy, using videos, using video storytelling to really have impact in that space. So that's what we're trying to do, as well as make some kind of research discoveries and then share that with the broader sector. So a lot of the way we're kind of thinking about this project is really thinking holistically, using the kind of safe system approach, which is understanding that it's never about a single thing. Like, of course, it's important that people wear seatbelts. That's one of the messages that we've made a video about, but it's also important to look at the bigger system and bigger network amongst that. So basically thinking about vulnerable road users, thinking about things like speed, thinking about all of the components that make our roads safe or dangerous, and really trying to get that message across. Now, I think an interesting part of the approach that we're doing in this initiative is recognizing that people are on their phones viewing the internet for fun, entertainment, and engagement. They're not necessarily there to learn. Like a lot of people that are listening to this right now that are kind of the more engaged set. We're trying to engage the mainstream audience. Now, because of that, we've got a real challenge of how do we make this interesting, engaging, surprising, educational, because people, in one sense, don't have to be here. We're kind of fighting with their favorite movies, their favorite creators. So, as part of this approach, we're trying to make things surprising or interesting or have a real strong hook so people kind of connect with it. So, what does that mean? It means we're kind of doing a lot of explainers about, why things are the way they are, where people might understand it at a basic level, like some road rules, but not necessarily know the history behind it. So I think seatbelts is a great example of that. People don't know generally that it is the law to wear the seatbelt, but they may not have known that here in Australia, Victoria was, according to the research, the first place in the Western world to introduce them as being mandatory, and how in the year before seatbelts were out, it was only about 10% use, but within the decade of them becoming law and compulsory, it was over 90%. So that's a staggering change that people certainly wouldn't necessarily know about, even if they know the basics of seatbelts are important and to wear them. So using that kind of surprising angle is part of this project. On the power poles around Melbourne, there are these blue reflective squares and rectangles. If you've never noticed them before, I promise that you're now going to see them everywhere. So what are they? In the case of emergency, time is absolutely essential, and it's why police cars and ambulances have sirens and can speed through red lights. And these blue squares are designed to help in an emergency. First, you'll notice that these symbols come in a set. There are squares accompanied by blue rectangles and even these blue reflectors on the road. And their role? To help the fire brigade to quickly identify street fire hydrants. And here's how they work. The blue squares point directly at the hydrant, which may be raised or in ground. The rectangles are on the side of the pole facing the street to alert the fireys that there's a hydrant nearby regardless of which direction they're driving from. And the road markers are designed to be easily seen when driving, including at night. So from now on, if you see a blue square, you can also quickly find a hydrant. And that's how good design is helping save lives around the city. I'm Julian O'Shea, and subscribe for more like this. So that's a quick taste of the types of videos I make. So these are generally explainer content. What that means is often diving into a particular topic and trying to let an audience understand what it is all about. This is a well-established genre of educational content, quite popular on YouTube in particular. Now, that video is part of a series that I've done called Unknown Melbourne. And in that, I travel around one of the greatest cities in the world, being Melbourne, Australia, and tell you about interesting places, facts, and things like that, which you just saw, which is kind of explaining something which you might have seen, but may not have understood. Now, often the categories of videos I make fit into the kind of genres of design, sustainability, a lot around kind of urban planning, urbanism topics. My background is in transport, so I'll often talk about roads and bike lanes and intersections, but often the category fits into this thing of things you didn't know you wanted to know about, because there's no one really searching up online, or maybe not no one, very few people that are typing in, what are these blue squares about? Or tell me more about fire safety, transport indicator signage. It's something that people don't necessarily opt into, but when they see it, they might engage with it. Now, I'm going to talk a bit later on about different platforms and the kind of importance of that, but that's kind of the category of videos I make. Now, that video you just saw is certainly, fairly representative of it. But interesting, that video is one of the most watched pieces of content I've ever made. Millions and millions of people have seen that. I think it was over 5 million maybe on YouTube, which is just a staggering number of people, which shows if you make something with a bit of a catchy hook, something interesting, something surprising, you might reach a much bigger audience than you ever thought possible. So this is a tuk-tuk. Now, this photo was taken in Thailand. So a tuk-tuk, if you've never been in one, they're also called an auto rickshaw or even an auto in South Asia, places like India, Pakistan. And they're a common way for getting around urban centres in some parts of the world, particularly in South and Southeast Asia. Now, I really enjoy these vehicles. I think they're fun. They're a fun and zippy way to navigate a city. They've got some benefits. They're smaller than a car, so they take up less space on our city streets. They're certainly more affordable, so it means the people that are, tuk-tuk drivers can pay less to start their entrepreneurial business. They've got some downsides as well, though. They have a two-stroke engine, so they pollute quite a lot, and they're quite loud because that's the sound that the engine makes, tuk 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 tuk, which is where the name comes from. So I was zipping around in one of these, and I had this idea: wouldn't it be fun to bring these to Australia, to at least build one here in Australia, but make it sustainable, make it quiet because it could be electric, low emissions. And that was the idea behind the project that became the Solar Tuk Expedition. So what did we do? I partnered with RMIT University. We bought a Thai-built tuk-tuk and we put a Tesla battery in it. So someone had a crash in their Tesla car, but the battery was still good. So we bought that cheap secondhand and we put it inside this tuk-tuk and fitted it out with solar panels. And we created the Solar Tuk. So there is a very wide view of it inside out the front of a solar farm with the riders. And what we did is over the course of a month, we drove across Australia from Melbourne to the Great Barrier Reef to talk about this quirky, fun vehicle. Now, part of this project was a few different things. One, I thought it would be fun. It was. I thought it'd be a really interesting idea to explore topics around sustainable transport, around climate change, but do it in an engaging way. Do it in a way that wasn't, very political and confrontational, but make it really kind of fun and engaging. And in that sense, it absolutely achieved its goal. So what did we do? We kind of drove across the country. Now, we did not drive very fast. I kind of reflected that after a week of our trip, we're still in Victoria and we could have driven home that afternoon if we're still in a normal car. But instead, we went on our way And over the course of the month, we did a lot of things. We visited the solar plants that you saw. We went to iconic sites like the Sydney Opera House. But the real highlight was this: reaching out to community groups, to school groups, and to bring the solar took to share the adventure. This was in Murwillumbah, and they followed our whole journey. They were there, kind of like watching our internet updates, and it was a really beautiful day to kind of arrive there and to talk to the students about solar energy and about the tuk tuk. Some really lovely signs there. May the sun shine upon your tuk tuk. The future is solar. Now, the other part and kind of lesson that I learned in doing this was that it's a project that the media were also really interested in. So we reached, kind of thousands of people in person and millions of people through the power of the media. So we did things like every ABC radio station between Melbourne and the Great Barrier Reef. We're on ABC News Breakfast Radio, and there's a media article there I like the headline for: "Meet the engineers who took the tuk out of tuk-tuks," because ours was electric. It didn't make the sound. Very clever headline writing there. And this was a project that I found really interesting. So as an engineer and kind of a storyteller, what was it about this that kind of captured attention? And this absolutely informs my work to this very day. So, why was this project so interesting? Why did it reach so many people? Well, I was actually so intrigued by that question that I went and did a PhD in this space. It was the intersection of sustainable transport as well as storytelling. So I actually went to Monash University and did a PhD exploring this topic. I built some crazy and fun and interesting and quirky vehicles. I built a solar powered kick scooter. Um, not that kick scooters need much power. It was more of a showcase vehicle, the one that was designed to be practical. Same with our solar tuk tuk. I built a solar powered bike that would turn solar energy into movement in real time. Because it's very hard to see what solar is doing if you've got a battery in the way. Because how much energy do you need? Does it work? Those kinds of things. It's great for showing students. And then finally, built a sustainable vehicle based on the Velomobile, which is basically a bicycle that you sit down, a recumbent bicycle that's covered in an aerodynamic frame. One of the most efficient vehicles ever created. So I used these vehicles, and the project was kind of in two parts. One was, what is the vehicle and the design? But the other one was, how do we use this to tell a story, to engage an audience? And that's really what this project and my PhD was about. So I'll show you one or two kind of highlights from it. This was called the Yarra Plastic Paddle. And in this, we built a plastic bottle kayak made from different bottles that the kind of volunteers collected. We got a lot of milk bottles donated from cafes in Melbourne, and we turned it into this boat. Now, to be clear, it's not a great boat. I fell in the Yarra River twice trying to get it all balanced, so we had to put on the ballast to make it stay up. But it certainly couldn't be denied that it wasn't an interesting boat. The idea behind this project was to collaborate with a not-for-profit organisation, Yarra River Keepers Association, who are responsible for advocating for the health of this river, and using it to engage the volunteers and to talk to the wider public by doing a bit of a stunt. And yeah, absolutely worked. We got some great coverage, and it was a beautiful day of collecting waste as we paddled down the river. Now, another project I did was a quadricycle project. Now, in doing this, a quadricycle is a four-wheel, four-person bike. So kind of like two tandem bikes bolted together. You might see them kind of riding down a beach, a bit of a family kind of ride. They're not necessarily the most practical things, but they're certainly a lot of fun. So what did we do in this project? Well, we wanted to get kind of cycling and sustainable transport on the agenda, advocating for things like cycle lanes, which make our roads and our streets safer. So in this project, what we did is to kind of get a bit of attention. We tried to set a world record. In this case, the fastest 10 kilometers on a quadricycle. Now, to be clear, it was not a very particular fast record. In fact, the fastest record on foot was faster than our time on a bike. So in that sense, it was a silly record. It was a quirky record. This is not something which will get us to the Olympics, but it did get us into the media. So we made the ABC News. Now, actually partnered with the weatherman, Nate Byrne from ABC News Breakfast. And got a lot of coverage there. We did it got some coverage in the morning. We got on the ABC News that night, and we got to go back into the studio to celebrate. So in that sense, it was quite a successful project. And I think this is a great place to start as we explore ways to talk about video storytelling for road safety, because it answers, I think, one of the most challenging questions. And that is, how do we cut through the noise? So back in the day, when the media was a limited number of radio stations, a limited number of TV networks, one way you could kind of guarantee your way to reach the audience was to be there, to be featured there. You could kind of buy your way in with ads. These days, though, as we kind of mentioned before, a lot of people just aren't on those channels anymore. And in fact, there's kind of no channel that everyone is on as such. And instead, there's a lot of places people find themselves. In fact, your internet viewing experience is almost certainly very different than mine. So the big challenge these days is not the ability to reach people, the ability to publish, because anyone can press upload on one of the major social media platforms. It's how do you cut through? How do you reach an audience? And that is kind of one of the first key lessons that I want to start with, which is if you be interesting, people will be interested. So these projects were not necessarily, great shows of human endurance or strength, but they were something interesting. There was a lot of human interest in making a boat out of plastic bottles or cycling your way on a quirky cycle into the Guinness Book of Records. So that's kind of what we're going to explore throughout this workshop. And the way I'm going to do that is explore a topic, often show a video alongside it, and then kind of break it down. And these are lessons that we can all use as we advocate for improved road safety. Now, that could be in your own neighborhood, saying that, look, this school zone is a bit unsafe. I think the speed limits should come down, or we should have some kind of safer crossing, or, there's too much car parking, encouraging cars to interact with young people, whatever it is that you think could make our streets and roads safer, or if it's advocating for behavior change, encouraging people to put on their seatbelt or make sure they're in a great condition, fit to drive, then whatever it is, these things apply. Now, these things are a bit universal, but I really want to kind of link case studies to how it might apply to road safety. So I've defined what I think are some of the 5 biggest ones, and I'll start to unpack them. But let's start with topic and title and an example video. Have you noticed that cars aren't colourful anymore? They're basically a mix of blacks, greys, silvers and whites. I'll show what I mean. Behind me we can see black and white and black, silver, white, black. Now if you look long enough you'll find some other cars. There's a red one, but pretty overwhelmingly on the road it's just a monochromatic mix of cars. And the data backs it up. This chart only goes back to the 1990s, and even then you can see the massive increase in the number of monochrome cars. Back here in the 90s, over half of all cars were colourful. This is a famous photo from Amsterdam in the 1970s. Now this photo is used a lot to show you that cities these days, which are amazing places to live due to cycling, due to walking, due to public transport, used to be very car dependent. But a little side feature about it is look how colourful all the cars used to be. A lot we can learn from places like Amsterdam to make cities more pedestrian friendly and livable. But when it comes to cars, there's a lot of downsides about them in the city. But one is they're just quite boring. The reason behind why we don't see more yellow and green and blue cars on the road, basically it's a money thing. The idea is that if you're reselling your car, you're more likely to get a resale value if it's something straightforward, less flashy, less people that might want it. So greys, blacks, whites and silvers tends to win out on the day. I'm Julian O'Shea, this is Unknown Melbourne. So to do a bit of analysis on this video, this is a good example of one where it really is a very small niche. This was something that I personally had noticed that as you stroll around the city, you don't see the bright yellow van that I used to get around in as a kid, and that something's changed. So look, this was an observation I made. I'm certainly not the first to have made it, but it's not something I've ever heard kind of, really spoken about much before. So I kind of just did a quick bit of research and put this video together. So this whole thing probably wasn't very long from start to finish. I'm using the green screen feature. That means you can jump online, snap a photo, and then it displays behind you kind of automatically in the app, and I piece this together. Now, this is an example of quite a niche topic. And that's, I think, something really that is valuable for something like this. So following your own interests is certainly a worthwhile way to do this. My theory is that if you want to watch something, other people almost certainly will as well. And importantly, if you want to watch something, it means it's probably something which doesn't exist yet. Now, in a video like this, it is a topic, again, that a lot of people aren't necessarily searching for. So you've kind of got to make it catchy. So the question right at the front, why aren't cars colourful anymore, is a great thing that makes someone stop. Because they either go, wait up, is that true? Oh yeah, they start to think about it, or they've recognized it, or maybe they're literally sitting on a tram, driving on a bus, as they can look out the window and see it for themselves. So that's a good way of kind of getting it on as a bit of a hook. So where it says there in vertical video, consider text on screen. That's what I did. So I started with those words on the screen. So when people see it, they can connect with it immediately. For a topic like this on a YouTube video, that becomes the title. Now, look, it should be catchy. The idea of making a title catchy, certainly not new. This is something that a lot of media has thought about. The idea of naming videos, naming films, naming books is certainly part of that. But look, I think for us, we're talking about topics which could be more technical, like road safety, like urban design. Finding ways to make them interesting is a real challenge, but it's a great opportunity as well. First up, I'll give it some thought. Actually, I'll show the video. We'll do an exercise, then we'll come back and show some videos. First up with audience. Now, I think it's important to have a target audience. That is the person in mind who you think the video is for. So when I craft some of my videos, I often think that the target audience is someone who's curious, they're interested, that they may be local. That could be within Melbourne, could be within Australia, and they kind of like to discover new things. They might listen to podcasts. They might go to occasional trivia night. They might watch documentaries. But I also hope my videos have fairly wide appeal. Now, in that previous video, I didn't use any jargon. I didn't talk about different paint types. I didn't talk about, vehicle models and SKUs, which is kind of the unit, and what that is like when a company has each item, they've got their own SKUs, so they'll say about how many different items you've got. I didn't use any of that lingo and jargon, and because I want to have wide appeal. So I also think the most successful videos are like that. They've got a strong target audience. This is for people interested in fashion. They're kind of forward thinking. They like to go out. But other people that stumble across it might be interested in the journey. So what I recommend is you think about who you want to target, noting that the goal is not always big numbers. Now, unfortunately, I think the videos stamp the number of viewers on them. And I don't think that's the best thing. You've been to a restaurant, they rarely, when you look at the menu, they don't say, we've served 6,000 people, 19,000 people have ordered that. That's not how much of the world works. When you get a book out the library, it doesn't say how many people have borrowed it. Unless it's a bestseller, they might write 2 million on top. And McDonald's is probably the only company I've ever seen that used to say how many billions sold. But outside of that, the world doesn't normally stamp on a viewership number. Because the internet does, people often overemphasize who their audience is. Now, what do I mean by that? In our case, in this project, we are often trying to talk to decision makers, people who have the power to make our streets safer, to put in protected bike lanes, to lower speed limits, to do these things that are well known in the research, in the government strategies, in the world's best practice. It's about creating that change. So don't stress if your videos don't get a lot of views. What you should matter more is, are the right people finding them? I'm going to give you an example about that in just a second. But before we do that, one observation, though, that people sometimes worry about is, look, I want my audience to be people interested in transport, public transport. I know they're experts in the field. So how do I talk to them, people that may have, done a PhD or worked in the sector for 30 years, but also talk to a wide audience? And my answer to that is specifics. What does that mean? It means if you said, for example, something like trains have more carrying capacity than roads. That is a fact that is well known by the transport and urban design sector. But if you said that, which would be new to a lot of people, and then said, let's have a look at this line in Melbourne, then even if someone is an expert in the field, maybe they're America's best train and road designer, they will have almost certainly never heard of the Lilydale line or whatever line it is in Australia. And by giving a specific, then they can either go, yes, that does align with my kind of technical knowledge, and I've learned something specific. Oh, that's interesting. You can see how they've put up their signs or how they've done the wayfinding there. So even someone who is perhaps even more knowledgeable than you in the field, they can learn something. So give specifics. A great thing about video as a medium is you can go and record stuff. You can go and ask someone. So again, even if someone designed the park that you think is such a good example of, they literally are the creator of it. If you interviewed someone walking their dog there that day and they said, I like this park because my dog likes this, little plant here, then they're learning something. they may know that it's a good park. They may know that dogs use it, but they didn't know that this person's one dog does that. So that's a great way to kind of add value if you're unsure of your audience makeup. Now, as I said, sometimes it's not always about, like the size of your audience, but it's who's seen it. So here's an example. Someone from the city of Melbourne reached out to say, thank you for promoting sustainable transport and helping us reach our transport strategy goal. So those views within that city council are probably worth more to me than 10 other views of just other people, because these people have influence. They're interested in this stuff, and helping make the road safer is what they're all about. So um, here's an exercise to do. Now, you can actually press pause now and go and jot out a sheet of paper. It says, get a friend if you're doing this as a group, or otherwise you feel free to do this after watching the whole video. But in our workshops, we would kind of take time to do this. But feel free to pause and do these exercises after I explain what they're about. So, great exercise is to brainstorm topics. Now, brainstorming is not about censoring. At this stage, you're trying to come up with as many ideas as possible. So I recommend getting out a sheet of paper or a blank document in Notepad or on a device and just listing things. Now, keep coming up with more and more, and don't think one idea is done just because you've written it down. So, for example, if I said dangerous intersections, great topic, really cool topic. But wait up. There's lots of different types of intersections. So you could break that down into dangerous intersections in cities, dangerous intersections on highways. You could then break it down and say, like, dangerous intersections, case studies from bad to good. You might think of 3 particular intersections. Oh, there's one on Kingsway. There's this one in the city on Flinders Street. Oh, there's another one that I used to ride past. You could get that specific. You then could say, dangerous intersections around the world. How do different countries deal with it? So you can see there that one small topic, or felt like a small topic, breaks off into a lot of different things. So that's a great way to brainstorm. And in this stage, you're just getting a lot of ideas down. Don't worry about censoring yet. You can do that later. Once you've got your ideas down, yourself go through the list and say, which ones do you find most interesting? Now, you are trying to then start to choose, but again, you don't want to censor yourself too much, in the sense we are only looking through the lens of what do I think other people are interested in. My first pass would be, would I want to make this video? If you don't want to make it, it doesn't matter if people might watch it. You don't want to make it. There's so many videos that you want to make that people would watch and that have impact. And we're trying to hit that Venn diagram. So if you've got a friend, pull the list out in front of them and say, hey, which one would you recommend? Which one would you watch? And that's a great mix of having internal and external perspectives. And next up, I recommend, if you've got an idea for different video ideas, who is the audience you're trying to make them for? Now, this stuff can be a bit chicken and egg. You could say, like, if we've got this audience, we could then brainstorm against it and do a bit of both. I always definitely do a bit of both. What is the videos I want to make? What videos would my audience find interesting? Oh, they like this stuff. They might like this stuff. Or I might go, I like this stuff. They certainly will. And then try to define them. Now, there's a few ways you could do this. You could just write that down in one sentence. I might say, for example, for my Unknown Melbourne series, I make videos for curious Melburnians interested in the world around them. Now, that audience mix doesn't have anything to do with age or gender or anything like that. Sometimes your audience may. Like a lot of brands will do that. They say their audience is women aged 20 to 34. That's fine as well. But you can choose the audience that kind of suits yours the best. Now, I do recommend, as I said before, you start with a really niche audience, but make the video beneficial to a much bigger group as well. Why is that? Well, it means the group that find it at the core will love it, and other people can enjoy it. I want to start by giving a case study about this.
I don't know if you've heard, but there's a lot of controversy around this new type of bus stop in LA. The idea was to create an alternative to bus shelters that added lighting and shade in areas where traditional bus shelters aren't practical, such as on narrow sidewalks, as well as to make the space safer for women and communities of color as they wait for the bus. Defenders of the LA DOT and the designers of the shelter have said that the design is cheaper than typical bus shelters, can be installed without permits from other city departments, and was funded entirely through grants. But the compliments generally end there. Critics say that the structure isn't positioned correctly to adequately shade the sidewalk at the hottest parts of the day, doesn't actually light up the area, took too much time and money to develop, doesn't provide any place to sit, and doesn't adequately solve any gender or race-related issues. Critics of the LA DOT have wondered why they spent so much money and time redesigning bus shelters when they could have spent more time and effort instead just modifying existing regulations and removing constraints to installing regular bus shelters.
Now, with this, when we're making videos in the kind of current era, they're often fairly short. We're making videos in this project, we're calling it the 100 to 0 project. So 100 seconds is around 1 minute 40. So if that's the goal, I actually recommend maybe even 90 seconds for some platforms. They'll all have different lengths that they can be. For a while, YouTube Shorts was limited at 60 seconds. So look, understanding a platform, we're going to talk about that in just a bit, is key. But broadly, a lot of these vertical videos are short. So my recommendation is that you have one idea or one key message per video. Rather than treat a video of like the history of road safety or all things that make cars dangerous, is you choose one and you explore that in a bit of depth. Why is that? Well, the internet is not got a limited number of pages. And if someone likes that video, they'll come and watch another one. So don't be worried about like having all these ideas in your head and try to get them all in a single video. Instead, choose a topic and choose the most interesting thing about it. So in the video we just watched, it was not about bus shelter design. It wasn't about the challenges of the LADOT. It was about this particular unusual design and the story behind it. They made this shelter because the regulations were so tough, they couldn't just go and build bus shelters. They wanted something they could roll out, but there was pushback around it because it doesn't solve all the problems. So it was quite a singular video. Like there's probably 100 other bus shelter designs they could have spoken about, but they spoke about one. They picked the most interesting thing. This is one where there's this unusual design and there's backlash about it. But then they did there is they chose the angle. Here's a new design. There's outrage about it. Let's explore why. Is it a good idea? Here's the upsides, but look, here are the downsides. Show when you can. You saw photos there. You saw imagery. You kind of got to understand what would have been a very hard thing to describe, in my opinion, because it's kind of a bus shelter that's really a piece of metal. It doesn't provide full shelter, but they called it a shelter. There's a solar panel on it, but it's not a full size. Like it's a very hard thing it would have been to describe, but a single photo or three, I understood it. I know what it looks like. So that's a really great example. And again, I'm always going to come back to specifics. So that's really best practice when it comes to video making is to pick out the piece that's most interesting, lead with that, and then you can step back and add more color to it. Now, I want to continue to give case studies of different great urban design channels that you should absolutely check out after this webinar's over, and we'll go to one more of those.
Watch this traffic light. When the light goes red for cars, it goes green for bicycles, but it goes green in every direction at the same time. There are dozens of junctions like this one in the Dutch city of Groningen. Urban cycling moves at a human scale at speeds that we evolved to deal with, so people cycling have time to react to one another. And because those people aren't trapped in giant metal cages, they're visible to other people cycling and can respond to body language and small changes in speed or direction to determine who goes first. This allows a huge number of people on bicycles to get through in a very short period of time, which makes these junctions work better for everyone. But it's even better to separate the routes for cycling and the routes for driving completely so that people cycling never need to stop for red lights, because ultimately, traffic lights are for cars, and without cars, you don't need traffic lights.
On the streets of Melbourne, you notice something unusual about the bins. They're solar powered, which begs the question, why? A challenge for cities is designing a system where rubbish bins are readily available, but some areas of the city are busier than others. In this case, you can either pick them up more, which adds to cost, or put more in place, which isn't great for the streetscape. Melbourne's solution to this is the Smart Bin, and here's how it works. These solar-powered bins actually double as trash compactors and can hold around 6 or 7 times as much waste as a normal bin. And they also have a built-in communication system that connects to the mobile network, which can report back when they need to be collected. After a successful trial, Melbourne replaced 772 bins with 397 smart bins, almost halving the total footprint on the streets, and importantly reducing collections of some bins from around 4 times per day to just 5.4 times per week. And what this means is that rubbish trucks are no longer required in the city during work hours. Melbourne bins, they're smarter than you might think. If you enjoyed that, I've got more videos about design and cities. I'm Julian O'Shea, take care. So there's a couple of videos from Not Just Bikes, the well-known channel from Urbanism, exploring all things about comparing the design of cities in Amsterdam and Europe versus North American cities, basically saying there's a lot to it and it's not just bikes that make it better, but there are other things as well. as well as a video about smart bins here in Melbourne. Now, the hook is incredibly important. It is certainly part of the video making process, which captures people's attention and retains them. And what I want to kind of explore here on how I did that with the video you can see kind of playing about the solar powered bins and why I think it's so important. Now, in YouTube, there is a title and a thumbnail. You actually create what it is that someone can select. It's like the front cover of a book and the title of a book, or the name of a movie plus the movie poster. It's kind of the digital version of that. Now, in this case, it was made for a social platform, and they don't normally have a title and thumbnail. Instead, the opening sentence becomes the title, and any text on screen kind of becomes the title. The opening image is the thumbnail. Now, the reason why this is so important is that in that format, the scrolling feed, which is the style in TikTok, it's the style in Instagram Reels, you are, in essence, opting someone into the video. The algorithm does that. People don't choose to watch it, they get served it. So your job as the video creator is to keep them engaged. So you've got to start with something which lets them continue to connect with it. So my video started with the bins in Melbourne are solar powered. Here's why. And you could kind of see a shot of the solar power with a big red arrow popping up. Now, that's both an interesting visual and a good hook because someone's like, why is that the case? So, look, the way I would have probably improved it looking back on this video is I would have probably put that text on the screen. So you don't have to even wait the 1 second for me to say it. You can see it within a fraction of a second. But it prompts something, it answers something. And importantly, this video isn't really clickbait because I do tell you why. You know, like I deliver on my promise that this video says. Here's a fact. And I explain it. But I also go a bit deeper. I talk about why rubbish management is an issue in cities, how this is a solution, and how, to be honest, it's a solution which also dives into the world of road safety, of saying, look, if we have less bins or bins that don't need to be picked up so much, we don't need to pick them up so often. Therefore, we don't need as many rubbish trucks. Therefore, we're making the streets safer by having fewer truck movements. So this is an example of you choose the hook, the bit that I think is most interesting. So I thought the most interesting bit was that these bins are solar powered because people can see that with their own eyes. They might have noticed it and not thought about it, or they may not have noticed it, but I thought that was a good hook and a good way in. So look, hooks have been around forever. It's the opening line of a book. It is the catchy part of a trailer. So it's nothing new, but we've got to do it in the digital video making era. Another great channel I recommend to you, which is called City Nerd. So this is by Ray Delahanty, a great creator from the US, who talks about a lot of urbanism topics and explores a lot of top 10 lists and applying data. So, you know, might kind of explore like what are some of the most walkable cities? What cities are really livable per dollar? Some really great analysis of the North American context. So there's another one that I recommend to you. Now, if you want to take another break from watching to do another exercise, here's what I recommend to you. So previously we pulled the exercise, we did some brainstorming. Well, we came up with topics and who the audience would be. Now, what I would love for you to do is for one or two or more of these, once you've got an interesting topic, define what your key message is. So what do we want to say about this topic? Do we want to say this is interesting or surprising? Do you want to try to get across some history? Do you want to try to change people's minds and opinions? Whatever that message is, as I said, I recommend you come up with one and you try to find the most interesting part of that story. So I mentioned before when I was giving examples, we could be talking about dangerous intersections. So what you could have done is said, hey, let's make this video about this one dangerous intersection I know. What would be the key message? Well, the key message could be, here's why it's dangerous. The sub-message could be, and here's how we could fix it. But maybe the most interesting thing about it is how dangerous it is. Maybe it appeared on the top 5 most dangerous intersections in your city. I know groups like the Royal Automobile Associations, like RACV here in Victoria, will often do an intersection black spot, which are the most dangerous intersections. Insurance companies will sometimes put out a bit of like content marketing describing some of the most dangerous streets, roads, and intersections. So maybe the interesting bit is, did you know this is the most dangerous intersection in Sydney or in this suburb? That is an interesting hook, particularly for local people who are your target audience. So if you've defined previously that your target audience is decision makers within that council and people that live there, that might advocate for safer streets, then that is a perfect hook for that audience. Why is that? Because people that live in South Bank or North Adelaide care a lot about South Bank or North Adelaide, you know? So that could be a really interesting hook. Something so that's a great key message. And that links into your hook. Because if your opening line is, this is the most dangerous intersection in suburb X, as you're showing suburb the intersection, that is a brilliant opening line and visual. Now, part of the reason why it's a great visual is, to me, the viewer, it says this person went there. This person's not just talking to a thing they found on the internet. They've actually put some effort in. They've actually gone and traveled. Now, a great thing about that is some people are a bit nervous about being on camera. And you'll note in some of the previous videos, in particular, not just bikes, they're not even in it. So, like, filming is a bit less scary. We're going to talk a bit about, as we get towards the end, about what it's like to go out and film. But yourself on camera, which I do, selfie mode, I appreciate is not for everyone. But filming things on your phone is very safe, very light. Like, it's very, very not challenging. Just stand on the intersection, press record, have a few cycles, get some close ups, get some different angles. But it's still an engaging visual if you had the text on screen that said why this is the most dangerous intersection in suburb X, as you show some cars driving through, maybe at speed or something. That's a brilliant opener. So anyone can do this. That's a great hook. So I want you to have a go at doing that with the sheet of paper or the notepad document. Answer your key message and your potential hooks. While you do that, if you want to pause, feel free. Otherwise, we'll jump to our next case study. Before we do that, we're talking platform. All right. So platform. Part of the information to know where your videos are going to go is it will shape what they look like. Now, there's a well-known phrase in the communication sphere, which is the medium is the message. The medium is the message. What you're publishing to is part of what you're publishing. So what does that mean? It means that where this stuff ends up, the tone will be different, the vibe will be different, and what people get out of it will be different. So, for example, if you're listening to broadcast AM national radio, the vibe will be very different than breakfast FM commercial radio. You can have more in-jokes, you can have more local references on FM. Your audience is potentially more diverse if you're talking to the whole country. So giving that stuff some thought really makes sense. If you're making a tabloid magazine that's meant to go by the shopping market checkouts, it's very different than if you're doing an academic essay. So understanding your medium is important. Now, that's true even of social media video, that they're all a little bit different. That said, there is a bit of a trend towards vertical scrolling video. In one sense, that's made our lives a bit easier. You used to have to think that Instagram was square photos, YouTube was horizontal videos, Instagram was under 90-second vertical videos, TikTok was scrolling, all of these different things. These days, a lot of the social media platforms are converging, probably because it's the most sticky, keeps you on the platform the longest. It's not necessarily the best, but that's kind of why they might do it, is videos that are vertical, that are a feed that you continue to scroll to. Now, the upside of that is that because they're all in a similar format, your video can be fairly similarly formatted. And in fact, you can upload the same video on a range of platforms. That said, though, there are some things that are distinct to the platforms, some different formats, some styles. So YouTube, for example, has horizontal videos kind of as the default for the main videos. And there's a bit of an expectation about how long they might be, about the style, the quality, some of those things, including within your own niche. Some general tips, though, think about subtitles. Captions on screen, burnt in, strongly recommended for that vertical style, because a lot of people are watching them on the tram, on the train, on the toilet, or on the couch while they're watching a movie, and their partner might be watching and they can't have the sound on. So that's just good best practice. Recognizing that people might want to share the video, so having things like maybe some information like burnt into the video, not just in the comments, like not just in the description below. Why is that? Because if someone downloads it, emails it, shares it, they can get that information. So, at the end, you might put a link to join a petition or to find out more or who your name is so they can follow along. Recognizing the comments is part of the culture. Now, you don't have to necessarily do all of this stuff, but if you want to engage, you can. and you can engage in different ways. You can let people what's called stitch your videos. They can pull a little bit and like turn it into their own, make it a bit more of a conversation than a one-way dialogue. Um, they can comment and you can comment back, make it a bit more of a conversation. So being conscious about where you want to publish is important. Now, you don't have to be a massive geek about all of these platforms, but I do recommend that if you are going to start to publish on them, you do start to use them. It's hard to publish to a platform you've never seen. It's like it'd be hard to write a novel if you've never read a novel. It'd be hard to, write a feature film if you've never seen one or only seen three. So, look, you don't have to be all over the platform, but do start to follow some people, maybe in your own niche. So, people that are interested in urbanism, road safety, design, cycling, um, and to get a bit of a feel for who's out there. They can be great friends and future collaborators. So now I'll
I
show you
swear,
that case
bro,
study.
just let me build one more lane. I swear we're gonna fix traffic. Let's build one more lane. Just let me build one more lane. Just let me build one more lane. I swear we're gonna fix traffic. Just one more lane and just make it bigger. Just make it bigger. We're gonna fix traffic. It's gonna fix traffic. It's gonna fix traffic. It's gonna fix traffic.
Do you know what would fix traffic?
Trains!
On what some of these platforms are. So I make videos on a range of platforms. As I said, the world is kind of converging on vertical scrolling videos. Even LinkedIn, even Twitter now, X has that platform built in. So have a look at what you can use. I'll just quickly reflect on what some of these platforms can be good for and the like. YouTube is, if you want to become a content creator, it's often the best in the sense that you can there's kind of a business model built in. So, YouTube shares ad money is one feature why people like it. I think it's great for longevity. It's owned by Google. Google is the search engine of the internet, at least for now, which means that even if you don't use YouTube, you've probably seen a YouTube video. They often are at the top of search. If you search, how do I change my tire? How do I fix my washing machine? There's a very good chance a YouTube video will be at the top of that list. So it's great because it's got longevity. It's got built-in search into the mix. TikTok is one of the newer platforms, but has just become wildly popular. A lot of people may not have used it. It feels like a fire hose. I found it very challenging to open it at first because it doesn't stop. It's just like content. I found it very exhausting. But after you kind of get used to it, it does have some real features. One is that people watch it for hours. And unlike a YouTube video, if YouTube videos are 20 minutes each, if you watch an hour of YouTube, you might watch 3, 4, 5, or 6 videos. So you're kind of giving 6 views. With TikTok, videos can be 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 1 minute, 3 minutes, 10 seconds. So in an hour, you could watch dozens and dozens of videos. What does that mean? It means that as a viewer, you're kind of giving dozens of views. So people that watch TikTok, you can find that like people are devouring a lot of content. They're devouring a lot of different videos. So it's got some of the biggest reach out of anything. Instagram also is kind of a Meta product, which means they're owned by Meta Facebook. Very popular. A lot of kind of like people use that. These are all talked about as being social networks, but I think a lot of people don't watch YouTube socially in the sense that they know the people they're watching. It's more user-generated entertainment, and I think TikTok's the same. Whereas with Instagram, a lot of people's friends are on it, so they're more likely to maybe share with people they know. So Instagram does very well for things like local events, local happenings. So it could be really good for local communities to talk about topics because people share it with their neighbors and their friends. LinkedIn can be great for sharing videos with professionals. So if your work is like, some of those memes I've said, yeah, maybe they do okay actually. But like you wouldn't necessarily put kind of comedy videos on LinkedIn. But if you're making videos about the, transport design system, then yeah, there's a good chance it'll be shared by different councils, by people that work within consulting, engineering firms, design firms. So a good example of that is I made a video about like Melbourne's water supply system, and you can kind of see not who watched it, but what companies or sectors they watched it in. And there was like water companies that watched it, like the water agencies. So I could see that like it had, like didn't get millions and millions of views, but the people that watched it were some of the most relevant. That's why it's one where like, a lot of creators won't talk about it, but I'll certainly mention it here because it can be relevant for the kind of work that we're doing. So, look, I want to talk a bit about a reason why people sometimes don't make videos, and that is they're scared of the comments. Now, I've picked deliberately some of my funnier comments that I've received. So this guy, John, wrote, I'd like to watch more of these, but I'm not prepared to look up close-ups of your face every few seconds. Sorry. He makes videos about really boring topics and somehow managed to keep the videos boring. Thumbs down. Now, look, 99% plus of my comments are nice. Is it true that the negative ones stick with you? Kinda. Yeah, that's human nature. But I want to say that there's a few strategies you can implement, but also this is not that big a deal. Now, one approach is to have the haters gonna hate approach that, look, just recognizing that, look, everyone gets some negative comments. They just don't matter. That's step one. But a nice feature that's kind of built in is that if you make something bad, people don't tend to see it. Now, what does that mean? It means that the way the algorithms work is they want people to keep watching. So if you make a video people love and share, the algorithm will send it to more people. So you make something great, more people are likely to see it. If you make something that's bad, you're not going to get a lot of hate comments. What's more likely to happen is it'll be seen by a few dozen, a few hundred, a few people, and that's it. So the system is designed where you fail small and you succeed big, which is a beautiful counteracting mechanism to any concerns people have about potential negativity. Now, a downside of this is people often struggle to start making content because by definition, they only see the good stuff. So they're used to seeing really high quality content. Whereas what I recommend you do is you go find those accounts, pick the ones in your niche, and go look at some of their videos that don't succeed. You realize, oh, actually, they're making some videos that no one sees. I'm only seeing their top videos. So that can be a downside of this, that can be discouraging. And finally, it is your choice how you deal with this. My approach is just ignore the comments, or I'll respond to them if they're like factually incorrect. Like if I say something and someone says, bikes kill more people than cars. I'll be like, oh, actually, that's not true. Here's the data. So just in case other people, get some misinformation. But if something's just a comment like, I didn't like this, I'll just ignore it and carry on with my day. I don't even delete them. Like I really don't mind that much. And even to the point where people in the comments will often make corrections for me. I don't have to even chime in. Another choice is turn off the comments. Something else some of my creator colleagues do is they'll look at each other's comments just to say, oh, looking good. Or, hey, got a bad one, are you up for it? They're like, nah, I don't want to hear it today. That's fine. Or, yeah, go on. Let's have a laugh together. The other thing I do is I screenshot some of the ones I find funny and share them with my friends. I think I've got a folder called haters and I put it there. So look, if this is the reason why you're not making videos, I'm just kind of going to encourage you to say, look, get over what's sometimes called cringe mountain. That's the only way you make good stuff, is to make a bit of bad stuff along the way and get better. Now, finally, the bit as I approach the end of this, I want to get you to reflect on platform. Where do you think your videos could go? Basically, I would recommend starting in the platform you use most. If you don't use TikTok, either start using it or choose one you do use. That's totally fine. So define that, because that can also help shape your shoot. And then finally is to plan and do your shoot. I've really only got one slide around gear, and I've not actually spent a lot of time on the direct film creation portion because as you've watched some of the videos, I hope you've realized they're pretty straightforward. I'm going to talk about the next slide about some of the gear and some of the equipment, but plan your shoot. What does that mean? It means write a short script. And as I said, you can either do that to the camera. Now, you're filming it on your own phone, recommended, which means you've got no film. It doesn't cost you money. You are allowed, and I have done 10 takes, 12 takes, 20 takes. No one has to see them but you. Feel free to film it again and again and again and again and again and again. That's totally fine. And then your editing process can get much easier. So what I recommend is you type out a script, practice saying it out loud and timing it, press record, say it out loud in the voice you would use. And it should come in at around that, 1 minute mark if you're doing vertical video, longer if you're making YouTube videos. It's actually not that long. A few sentences often is all it needs to be because it can be short. It can be 20, 35, 50 seconds. That's totally fine. And then work out what shots you need. So if you said this is the most dangerous intersection in our suburb, I would want to see some wide shots, some close up, some of the specific things you mentioned. If you're like, the stop sign is blocked by this tree, we'll get a shot of that. If you say, look how long it takes to cross the street, you're probably not going to show that shot in full, but you could record it and speed it up in post, or you could just show it and then say, put on the screen that goes for, you only got 20 seconds to cross this major road. Work out what shots you need and then get out there and film. So I'm going to kind of finish. This is the last major slide with the bit of gear you need to do. And I'm going to say, keep it simple. Keep it simple. In short, lights, camera, action. You'll need a camera, But the best camera you've got is the one you've got, and that is almost certainly your phone. These days, I really struggle to recommend cameras unless you're going quite kind of professional, or really want to make something of this, because phone cameras are so good. So good. They're 4K. That's about how resolution, how many pixels you can get. My eyes are barely 4K. I can't tell the difference. Other reasons why your phone is so good: you've got it on you. You don't feel self conscious using it or taking it out of your pocket. It's very portable, handheld. You know how to use it already because you film things in your life. You've got a camera as well. So, unlike video cameras of old, you would have a camera and you'd also take a film camera for filming stills. It does all of the above. So, look, action cameras, they're sometimes known as GoPros, or DJI makes some as well. They can be used as well. I've also pictured on the right there some of the other step-up cameras. But look, I'm not going to recommend them necessarily. I think by the time you decide you need them and want them, there's some brilliant YouTube videos to recommend gear. But one picture there is the DJI Pocket. It's like a drone camera on a stick. It's called a gimbal. Gimbals keep your camera steady. So that can be great if you've got a bit of movement to it. And then there's a Sony Alpha full frame camera there with changeable lenses if you want to really step up your gear. Tripod, always anything goes. If you're going to film yourself, get something that kind of goes to your height and with a good phone clamp on it. Just be careful, it's not going to blow away in the wind. I've certainly had a phone go down in the grass once and almost go down once when I quickly grabbed it. So what you can do there is you put your bag on it so it doesn't fall. You also can get kind of handheld tripods. So rather than full-size ones, is you can get small ones like this, and there you can kind of mount your phone to it and film yourself like that, or put it on a desk, and then it can kind of mount itself. Now, one bit of technical advice I would recommend is that sound is key. So I'm using a microphone right now, right there, and having good sound does matter. So if you're going to be like far away from your phone, like more than kind of handheld, I recommend you get a wireless microphone. There are a range of different ones, and if you're doing voiceover later, I recommend getting a good. Doesn't mean like expensive. You could be, kind of a $10 mic that you plug into your phone. That's totally fine, because if you're talking to it very close to your mouth, then the sound quality will be pretty good. But if you're going to recommend a wireless mic, companies like Rode and DJI make some of them, or a desktop one. For information, this one is a Shure microphone. Now, with lights, I've actually got a light shining on me right now, and what that does is, one, it makes me very visible, and it makes people look fairly presentable. They don't need a light to do it. In fact, the best light source of all is the sun. Now, do note though that when you're standing in direct sun, you'll get shadows, and it will be quite a hard light that is like really bright and really dark. Whereas often what looks more flattering is a soft light. So the way you can do that is, basically pull down not the curtains which cover the light, but one of those diffusing curtains, or be near a window without the sun shining in. So I'm kind of doing that as well. I've got a light and the window just there. So it means that the light is very soft on all sides of my face. There aren't a lot of shadows there. If I put my hand there, you can even see the shadows aren't that dark because light's coming in from a big direction. And, if you don't like your wrinkles or whatever, this can certainly make people look a bit more flattering. It's why people use like ring lights, or makeup chairs have lights all the way around, is to kind of improve that. What do I say you actually need? The minimum you need is your phone and the camera on it. The next thing up I would get is probably a microphone to go into your phone. Next thing up I would get is a little tripod to hold it still. And that is, I'd say, all you need. Now, you probably can edit this. Now, you can edit it within the apps themselves. That's why I've not dived that deep into video production, because the apps can kind of do it for you. Now, one option is you do it in a single take. A lot of videos are like that. Press record and just say your 30 seconds worth of stuff. Press stop. That could be a great video. You could say a fact or show something. If you want to get more advanced, you can put overlay. So when I say, this crossing is dangerous from the pedestrian side, show the clip from there. Drivers need to wait here. You could show that bit there. Now, some kind of editing tools. CapCut is free to download. You can pay for more features, but that certainly works. And you can put captions on there. As I said, you can use the features that are already in the apps. Instagram and TikTok have their own video editors. To get started, you really don't need a lot. I do recommend that some YouTube channels that you can just go check out. If you want to learn the basics of, there are so many out there. Just do beginner's guide to editing on Instagram or editing on TikTok, or overlay, and you'll find some great stuff. Instead, this webinar has been a lot about how do we use the best practice of educational and video storytelling to talk about road safety. On that note, I will start to wrap up and just say thank you for being part of the 100 to 0 campaign. I would like to thank the Australian government under their National Road Safety Grant Program for providing financial support for this project, basically letting us do this, enabling this to happen. As part of this campaign, we're making a lot of videos. And as I said, we're trying to learn a lot and share information like this with the whole sector. So you can follow along there, our sites, 100 to 0. Check them out on your favorite app of choice on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Facebook, and our website, 100to0.org. Any question, feel free to reach out through that page, and I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar or see you on the internet. Thanks a lot.